Look right, look left, look right again. If all's clear, walk quickly across. Remember, be smart, be safe.
Batman of 1966 held the record for the longest-running live-action superhero television series until Smallville surpassed it in 2007.
What I would love to do is come in and play Uncle Batman.
Uncle Batman, right, yeah.
In other words, things get so tense and awful, so...
However, despite its popularity and 120 episodes, one particular scene remained completely hidden from the public eye for decades. And today, the real footage has now surfaced. That means for the first time in 60 years, fans are seeing something that was never supposed to be seen. So don't even think about clicking away, because what I'm about to show you is a time-traveling secret that the world was never meant to witness. The mystery of the missing Batman scene. For many years, Batman fans found themselves surrounded by whispers and half-truths about lost footage from the legendary 1966 television series. The show, which had once defined campy superhero fun, had faded into history with Adam West stepping away from the cape and cowl. Yet something about its disappearance left a lingering mystery. Unlike other characters who resurfaced again and again in live-action adaptations, Batman had somehow been kept at arm's length from television. Why was this the case? Why would one of the most popular superheroes in the world remain absent from live-action TV for decades when every other major comic character had some kind of revival? The question alone was enough to spark endless debates among fans who had grown up with the caped crusader. Over the years, a rumor began to take shape and eventually solidified into what many in the fandom believed to be fact. It was said that Disney had quietly gained exclusive rights to Batman on television, which meant that Warner Brothers and other studios were left with their hands tied. This explanation seemed to provide a neat answer to a complicated problem. After all, what other reason could there be for the Dark Knight's strange absence? Fans pointed to legal battles, contractual clauses, and licensing issues that dated back to the original 1960s show, which had aired on Fox. Could it be that this tangled web of corporate ownership was the real villain keeping Batman off screens? Some even traced the rumor to an article published in 2012 that described how, for nearly 40 years, Warner Brothers could not manufacture toys based on the Adam West series due to rights disputes. If toys were restricted for that long, then perhaps television appearances faced similar hurdles. At least, that was what many were convinced of. What made this theory more believable was the curious way that reruns of the old series often appeared incomplete. Longtime collectors and casual fans alike began to notice missing moments. Certain Batgirl exit scenes, small snippets of dialogue, and even parts of the iconic Bat fight sequences with their colorful sound effect graphics had quietly vanished. Why would anyone cut these scenes? Were they censored or simply misplaced? To fans who already suspected hidden truths, these edits were not just minor adjustments. They were clues, breadcrumbs pointing toward a bigger mystery. The idea that Batman footage was being deliberately trimmed, hidden, or erased only fueled speculation that there was much more content buried somewhere out of sight. And then there was the story of the lost London footage. This was not just a small edit or a missing line of dialogue. It was an entire piece of Batman history that had slipped through the cracks, so effectively erased from American memory that even the most passionate collectors never suspected it existed. Back in 1967, Adam West had filmed a special clip in full Batman costume, not for an episode, but for a road safety public service announcement in the United Kingdom. For decades, nobody outside Britain knew about it. Can you imagine that? a piece of official Batman film starring the original television Batman, sitting unnoticed in British archives for half a century, while fans argued over what might have been lost. When the footage finally resurfaced in 2018, it was like uncovering buried treasure. The discovery came thanks to Kaleidoscope, a television archive group dedicated to retrieving the top 100 missing clips in British TV history. This Batman PSA was among their finds, and suddenly, something thought to be gone forever was available for the world to see again. Until then, even Batman experts had believed it no longer existed. For years, the footage had been quietly locked away, untouched, and forgotten. But once revealed, it changed how fans thought about the missing pieces of the Batman legacy. If this clip could go unnoticed for decades, hidden in plain sight, what else might still be tucked away in storage rooms, private collections, or forgotten reels gathering dust? The secrecy surrounding this discovery did more than just satisfy curiosity. It reignited questions about how much of popular culture had slipped through history's cracks. For Batman enthusiasts, it confirmed that not everything from the series had been accounted for, and that perhaps the narrative of missing or banned content carried more weight than skeptics wanted to admit. Could there still be other reels, perhaps more daring or experimental, sitting unseen in archives around the world? Was the Batman of the 1960s more complex than the light-hearted image often remembered by audiences? Questions like these kept fans intrigued, reminding them that even after decades of analysis, the story of the Caped Crusader on television still held mysteries waiting to be uncovered. They banned it back in 1966 and swore it would never see the light of day. But now, after 6 decades, the truth is out. Ready to see why this Batman scene shocked everyone? Don't blink. You'll want to catch every detail. What made the scene controversial? In May of 1967, something rather unusual took place, and it involved none other than Adam West, the man who had become a household name for wearing the cape and cowl of Batman. Instead of fighting crime on the streets of Gotham City or sparring with villains like the Joker or the Riddler, West found himself in London, stepping into the Batman costume for a purpose that had nothing to do with the television show or even a feature film. This time, he was not performing for entertainment at all. He was there to deliver a message, a public service announcement about road safety for British children. It might sound odd to modern audiences, but at the time, it made perfect sense. Batman was one of the most recognizable characters in the world, and if Batman told children how to cross the road safely, who would dare not listen? The short film, however, was never broadcast in the United States and ended up buried in history for more than 50 years. For many fans, discovering its existence feels almost like stumbling upon a lost relic of pop culture, something that sparks both curiosity and amusement. After all, who would have thought Batman would trade in his Batmobile for a quiet London street, reminding children to look both ways before crossing? The public service announcement itself was only about a minute long, yet it carried the weight of Batman's serious authority. Adam West, fully dressed as Batman, appeared on a calm London street, and he began by telling children that even though he was taking a holiday away from crime fighting and Gotham City, danger on the roads was something that never went away. He then explained and demonstrated the curb drill, a safety routine that taught children to stop at the curb, look right, look left, look right again, and only when the road was completely clear, cross quickly. For British audiences in 1967, this would have felt both timely and clever. The Batman television show had become immensely popular on weekend television, and with the UK release of Batman, the movie, just months earlier in December of 1966, The character was at the peak of his fame overseas. What better way to capture children's attention than to have the caped crusader himself teach them how to stay safe on the streets? Yet, when one looks at this PSA today, it also invites a fascinating question. Why did such a unique clip remain hidden from American audiences for decades? Why was something so lighthearted and educational kept apart from the mainstream circulation of Batman's history? To understand that, one has to consider the strange and delicate cultural climate of the 1960s. At first glance, a road safety clip might seem harmless, but the truth is that everything Batman represented at the time was under careful watch by producers and executives. In 1967, ABC and the show's creators were dealing with more than just scheduling and ratings. They were managing Batman's image against rising controversies about what the character supposedly symbolized. Earlier that same year, a magazine called TV Radio Album ran an article titled "The Whisper Campaign Against Batman and Robin." This piece directly addressed the swirling rumors that questioned the nature of Batman's relationship with his young sidekick, Robin. These rumors had been lurking for years, whispering that the dynamic duo's partnership carried undertones that conservative America was not ready to accept. The magazine even drew cheeky comparisons between the Batman stars and pianist Liberace, who, not long before, had sued newspapers for implying his homosexuality. For many executives, this sort of talk was more dangerous than any fictional villain, because it threatened to tarnish the wholesome image they wanted to sell to families. But where had all these rumors come from in the first place? To trace their roots, one must go back more than a decade earlier, to 1954. That was the year psychiatrist Frederick Wertham published his infamous book, Seduction of the Innocent. In this book, Wertham argued that comic books were corrupting the minds of America's youth. He accused Batman comics in particular of promoting what he described as a psychologically homosexual relationship between Batman and Robin. At the time, American culture was deeply conservative, and such accusations carried weight far beyond mere pop culture criticism. Parents panicked, politicians held hearings, and comic book publishers scrambled to defend themselves. Wertham's words haunted the world of Batman for years to come, and by the time the television show aired in the mid-1960s, producers were already wary of stirring up further controversy. Could Batman still be fun and campy without giving fuel to those who insisted it was sending the wrong message? The producers decided to fight fire with strategy. They began tweaking scripts to ensure that Batman was consistently portrayed as a figure of traditional masculinity. Romantic subplots with women were introduced to make his heterosexuality unquestionable. Even small details were carefully considered so that nothing in the show could be misinterpreted. Beyond the scripts, the publicity machine worked overtime. Photos and magazine spreads showed Adam West and Burt Ward, who played Robin, lifting weights, practicing karate, and talking about their personal lives in ways that underscored their manliness. These carefully crafted images were not about selling Batman's story, but about selling Batman's reputation. Everything had to align with what 1960s audiences expected of their heroes: masculine, wholesome, family-friendly, never deviant. Within this fragile cultural context, the 1967 Road Safety PSA takes on a deeper meaning. It was not merely about teaching children how to cross the street. It was also about showcasing Batman as a role model, serious, dependable, and aligned with the values of the day. By placing Batman in an educational setting, talking directly to children about safety, the production team reinforced his image as someone trustworthy, not controversial. Was it by accident, that this PSA never crossed into American television? Perhaps it was a matter of rights and distribution. But one could also imagine that producers in the US feared it might dilute or complicate the narrative they were already working so hard to control. In Britain, where Batman was simply a popular import, such concerns did not weigh as heavily. But in America, every move Batman made was scrutinized through the lens of cultural debate. Looking back now, one cannot help but smile at the oddness of it all. Here was Adam West, dressed in a costume that, to modern eyes, seems delightfully campy, standing on a quiet London street and reminding children to look right, look left, look right again. What child watching that would not have taken the advice to heart? And what adult, looking back today, would not find it both amusing and oddly touching? It speaks to the enduring power of Batman as a cultural figure. Even in something as simple as a road safety clip, the character carried authority, charm, and a sense of moral guidance. Because now, after more than 6 decades hidden away, a scene like this has resurfaced. And trust me, you'll want to keep your eyes glued to the screen till the very end. Because what you're about to see is more than just television history. It's a glimpse into why Batman became bigger than anyone could have imagined. A scene resurfaces after 60 years. The story of the long-forgotten Batman road safety PSA is one that feels almost like a legend whispered in corners of pop culture. The kind of tale that makes people wonder if it was real or just a memory mixed up in the minds of fans. For decades, the 1967 clip was thought to be lost forever, buried in time, unseen by generations who grew up loving Batman. Then, in 2018, it suddenly resurfaced, shining a light on a small but fascinating piece of history from the Caped Crusaders' world. Imagine stumbling upon something that was believed to have disappeared more than 50 years ago. What kind of feeling would that bring? Excitement, disbelief, maybe even relief that a piece of history had been saved. That is exactly the kind of reaction this discovery stirred in fans, historians, and media preservationists when it finally came back into the public eye. The rediscovery of the clip did not happen by accident. It came about through the dedicated work of Kaleidoscope, an organization based in Birmingham, England, that specializes in tracking down missing television footage. For years, this group had made it their mission to dig through the forgotten corners of media history, combing through dusty film canisters and overlooked archives. Their work was not always glamorous. Most of it involved patient searching, slow cataloging, and endless checking of reels that often turned out to contain nothing of interest. But occasionally, persistence paid off in ways that no one could have predicted. The Batman Road Safety PSA was one of those rare rewards. Chris Perry, the CEO of Kaleidoscope, described their process in a simple but powerful way. We spend a lot of time searching through old canisters or looking through people's lofts to try and find these shows or clips which are thought to have been completely erased from history. His words captured both the painstaking effort and the joy of such work. After all, isn't it remarkable to think that something the world had written off as lost could still be hiding in an attic or basement, waiting to be rediscovered? This particular find reminded everyone just how fragile cultural history can be. Television, especially in its early decades, was not treated with the reverence it has today. Many shows and clips were simply taped over or discarded to make room for new content. Nobody imagined that, half a century later, fans and historians would be scouring the globe to bring these pieces back. The Batman PSA was an example of what might still exist out there, tucked away in places no one has thought to look. If this small clip could survive unseen for 50 years, what else might still be out there? How many other cultural treasures are waiting for their second chance? The Batman footage did not just sit quietly in the archive once it was found. Kaleidoscope understood the excitement it would generate, so they decided to give it a proper unveiling. On April 14, 2018, at Birmingham City University, the public got their first look at the historic clip. This event was no ordinary screening. It was designed as the launch of Kaleidoscope's ambitious campaign to recover the UK's top 100 missing television shows, and what better way to start than with Batman? The Caped Crusader has always carried a certain timeless charm, and bringing him back through a forgotten PSA created a sense of nostalgia that touched both fans and professionals. The event was more than just a showing. It was a celebration of television's power to connect generations. Alongside Batman, other rediscovered gems were presented, including clips from Out of the Unknown, Sexton Blake, and The Goodies. Each of these brought with it its own story of loss and rediscovery. But Batman naturally stole the spotlight. After all, who could resist seeing Adam West once again in his iconic role, delivering a message that mixed entertainment with public safety? The reactions from the audience at the screening made it clear that this was more than just a quirky piece of film. There was a real sense of astonishment, almost as if people were witnessing a small miracle. For longtime Batman enthusiasts, seeing the PSA was not just about nostalgia. It was about reclaiming a piece of history that they had assumed was gone forever. One could almost feel the ripple of excitement across the room as the footage rolled. It was a reminder of how powerful even a short clip can be when it carries with it decades of mystery and longing. Fans felt as though they had been let in on a secret, something special that connected them directly to the past. Historians and media preservationists, on the other hand, viewed the discovery as proof of why their work mattered. It validated the belief that no artifact is too small to be worth saving, because each piece adds to the bigger story of how television and popular culture developed. This rediscovery also sparked broader conversations. What does it mean when a piece of television once thought lost suddenly reappears? It forces people to reflect on how much of cultural history has already slipped away. It also raises the question of responsibility. Who should be ensuring that such treasures are preserved? Should it fall on organizations like Kaleidoscope, on broadcasters, or on individuals who might unknowingly have reels of forgotten history in their homes? The Batman PSA served as a powerful reminder that preservation is not just about nostalgia, but about maintaining a link to cultural heritage. Without these rediscoveries, entire generations would have no way of experiencing the media that shaped earlier eras. Isn't it fascinating how something as small as a road safety clip can suddenly highlight the importance of saving history for the future? Even beyond the practical lessons, the rediscovery carried a symbolic weight. Batman, as a character, has always stood for vigilance, for watching over the city and protecting what matters. In an almost poetic way, the return of this PSA felt like Batman himself had been watching over a small corner of history, waiting for the right time to re-emerge. It was a reminder that stories never truly die, as long as someone is willing to look for them. The audience at Birmingham City University might have come expecting a novelty, but what they experienced was much deeper. They were witnessing proof that the past is never as far away as it seems, and that even forgotten pieces of film can hold meaning for the present. Looking back, the rediscovery of the Batman Road Safety PSA in 2018 was more than just a quirky footnote in pop culture. It was a moment that blended nostalgia, history, and celebration. It was about the joy of fans who had their faith rewarded. the pride of preservationists who saw their efforts vindicated, and the curiosity of those who realized that countless other treasures may still lie hidden. It asked everyone to consider how fragile and precious cultural memory really is. After all, if Batman can return after 50 years in hiding, who knows what else might be waiting to be found? Could there be lost performances, unseen episodes, or forgotten messages still tucked away in some archive or attic? The answer is almost certainly yes. And that is why this rediscovery matters, not just for Batman fans, but for anyone who cares about the story of television and its role in shaping culture. Because this rediscovery isn't just about Batman, it's about the bigger picture of how television leaves behind echoes of the past. Echoes that still shape the way we see culture today. And when you really stop to think about it, that's what makes this moment so important. Which brings us right to the heart of it all. What this means for Batman's legacy. The rediscovery of the long-lost Batman footage has stirred much more than a casual reaction in the world of entertainment. It has been described as far more than just another curious addition to pop culture trivia. People have said it feels almost like digging up a time capsule, one that offers a fresh look into how audiences once connected with television, heroes, and the power of media itself. It makes one pause and wonder, how often do we overlook the importance of the past simply because it feels outdated, when in truth it can hold messages that still resonate today? In this rediscovered footage, the conversation goes beyond Batman's colorful adventures and ventures into a deeper reflection about the role the 1966 series played, both as entertainment and as a cultural marker of its time. When people revisit the Adam West era, they often do so with a sense of humor, calling it campy or lighthearted compared to the darker versions of Batman that dominate screens today. But this rediscovery challenges those quick dismissals. It encourages a re-evaluation of the series, urging audiences to see it not only as a playful show with quirky villains and exaggerated dialogue, but as a cultural artifact that captured the spirit and standards of its age. Those who have studied it closely have pointed out that the series reflected the changing attitudes of the 1960s, a decade marked by social transformation, rising awareness of public messaging, and a redefinition of popular heroes. It is almost fascinating to think that a show many saw as simple fun was also a mirror reflecting what society valued, questioned, and even feared during that time. Was it not the very essence of storytelling, after all, to hold up a mirror to its audience? What stood out most in the rediscovered footage was the public service announcement, a reminder that Batman was not just a masked crusader fighting criminals on screen, but also an authority figure whom people trusted. Children looked at Batman as a hero, yes, but also as someone who spoke to them about safety, responsibility, and doing the right thing. The series blurred the line between fiction and reality in such a way that the character could guide real-world behavior. This discovery raises a thought that perhaps many have overlooked. How much influence do fictional characters actually carry in shaping the way people live their everyday lives? For those watching in the 1960s, Batman was more than a caped figure on television. He was almost a friend, a teacher, and a symbol of good choices in an era that valued morality lessons tucked inside entertainment. The rediscovery of this footage also brings forward the importance of media preservation. If it had not been found, it might have slipped quietly into oblivion, leaving behind no trace of the unique moment when Batman stepped off the comic page and television screen to give real-life advice. This reality highlights the tireless work of media archivists, groups such as Kaleidoscope, who dedicate themselves to preserving fragments of history that are often taken for granted. Their efforts make people realize how fragile cultural memory really is. One cannot help but ask, how many pieces of history have already been lost simply because no one thought to save them? The very fact that this footage almost vanished forever underscores how easily a society can lose valuable parts of its story. In a time when so much is digital, the discovery reminds everyone that even the simplest recordings can serve as priceless windows into the past. The recovered Batman scene also expands the understanding of Batman's cultural story. Many often assume that the superhero's global reach only began in the modern age of blockbuster films and the internet. Yet, this rediscovered piece proves otherwise. Even in the 1960s, Batman managed to leap beyond entertainment and act as a public safety ambassador. His character was flexible enough to step into classrooms, households, and communities, showing his influence extended far beyond the fictional streets of Gotham City. It makes one reflect. What other fictional heroes have managed to occupy both realms, teaching real-life lessons while continuing to captivate audiences in imaginary adventures? The scene reaffirms that Batman was not just a comic character dressed in a cape, but a cultural icon whose versatility made him part of public consciousness across borders. What makes this rediscovery even more interesting is that it is not an isolated event. History has shown that other superhero-related content has also been unearthed or revisited after long periods of obscurity. There have been early Superman radio shows, forgotten and later recovered, which gave audiences a new appreciation for how Superman was introduced to listeners before he dominated cinema screens. There have been unaired pilots of Wonder Woman that never made it to broadcast, and controversial comic book storylines that publishers once considered too daring for their time. Each recovery or reevaluation of such materials adds depth to how people view superheroes. Instead of seeing them as static figures, these rediscoveries remind the world that superheroes have always evolved in response to society's expectations, concerns, and imagination. The Batman footage is a perfect example of how entertainment has been used not just to amuse, but also to educate and shape behavior. This raises another question worth pondering. If Batman in the 1960s could encourage real-world safety, how are today's superheroes influencing the thoughts and choices of their global audiences? The answers may not always be simple, but the rediscovery of the footage makes the question worth asking. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.